What's up, guys? Today we're installing Trans Am bracing from OpenTracker Racing in this 1964 Mercury Comet. So these types of braces were very common in the early 60s for Falcons, Comets, and Mustangs. And the idea is that you're strengthening this area in here. Normally your upper control arm would mount right here. You're gonna see 4 holes, and the only reason that you see 4 right here is because I have the Shelby drop already done. So imagine these bottom holes weren't there if this was a totally bone stock Falcon or Comet. But the idea is you take this brace, you weld it in to this location right in here, and that is going to add a ton of rigidity right here. It was very popular for the Trans Am style racing series of that era. First things first, chances are, and this isn't fully clean yet, you are going to obviously have to disassemble everything so you have access. Watch my earlier videos if you want to see how all this stuff came out. But for right now, we've got it all out. We've done some very basic vacuuming. This area where they go will collect a lot of debris, so clean that out first. Once you have it very roughly cleaned, go ahead and just kind of drop these in there so you get an idea for where they go. Some modifications are going to be required. For one, this ear right here is going to have to get bent downward to fit a little bit better. Chances are I probably am hanging up still on some junk that's in this channel, so I'm going to try and get it extra clean and then set it back in here, take a Sharpie and kind of mark the perimeter so I know where to remove paint, because obviously you want to have all that paint removed so you get a nice good spot to weld to. These are weld-in, but this gives you an idea of how they sit. The instructions say that, like, kind of in this orientation, you want it about a 45-degree angle. So if it's sitting up too high, chances are it's hitting something down in there. We're going to clean that out a little bit better. Just looking, I think I'm gonna take a grinder and just lightly touch this side right here, because I think I can get this side to lay flatter if I just trim that a little bit. Again, I mean, every car is gonna be a little bit different. These things were known to flex. That's the whole point of adding this. You may have to trim just a little bit, but it's very obvious which side it goes on. If you try and put it the wrong way, it doesn't fit. There's a good shot of all that crud that gets down in there. So again, you can kind of see the lip I'm talking about. It would be very difficult to weld that. This side fits a little bit tighter. I like the fitment up here. This is better. Still need to bend that ear, but again, fits pretty good. I think the trick on this side, just to make my life a little bit easier, is I'm going to get this kind of set in place where I want it, bend this first, you know, come and get all the paint off. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tack it like boop, boop, maybe even run a bead across here. Then I'm gonna come and do my little cut, and fold in. Now you don't have to do that. You could come in here and try and lay your weld in, and that would be fine. And somebody might argue that it's better to leave this rib like this, but I really think the main structure is down lower. And the fact that we're folding this over and tying this in here, which is then getting tied in up here, I think it adds kind of overall strength. But I think the trick is on this side, lay this in, tack that first, because what happens is when you fold this over, naturally this wants to rise up. So if you go and scribe your line and you get all your paint removed and then you bend this over, all of a sudden this thing shifts up. I did like 2 bends. I drew a line from this point right here down to the corner, put that in a clamp and bent it to kind of get this whole side rolling over. And then I drew a line from here to here, took this little ear and bent that in. And I know it's hard to kind of see. Again, it's not gonna lie perfectly flat, which will make it more difficult to weld, but this one's in there a lot better. And I think I'll take this off, scribe it, and then when I fold this over after this is tacked in place, it's gonna come out better because it's gonna be tighter than the first side. Okay, proceed at your own risk with this method of doing it. I did something a little bit different than the instructions. Now what the instructions say to do is to just slide this piece behind this lip and then weld it. But to do that is a very awkward angle. So what I decided to do is just slice into this little webbing right here. It's like a double walled webbing, and then fold this over so it touches here. I think that is the way to do it. I did it on the other side, and this side turned out much better because I tacked that in first so nothing could move. It still wants to move, and you will have to go around and basically take your punch and like try and drive everything in as close as possible so your welds are as neat as possible. Paint's on this side. Again, this is just what I had laying around. I'm gonna come back with flat black, but we got the paint on, it's welded in, no grinding. I am gonna come and hit it with all the seam sealer. The stuff that I had here I thought was good, but it's not, so we'll do that, and then it'll be just like it was always like that from the factory. Okay, here's the seam sealer that I got. This just came from my local O'Reilly. It's about 18 bucks. You could get 3M stuff, and I'm sure it's arguably better, but is it twice the price better? I don't know. 18 bucks seemed fine. I think this stuff is gonna be great. I also went ahead and got some flat black just because I didn't like the look of the gloss. But again, that was just to stop any kind of rust from happening. So I'm gonna go ahead, put this on, smooth it out with a knife, read the instructions. You probably want this to fully dry before you paint it. So I may or may not get this in the video, but who knows? Either way, I'll show you the final product or very close to it here in a second. Okay, if you're curious of the two different sides, this is the first side before paint. You can notice I left a little lip on the corners there, which makes it a little bit harder to put the seam sealer in, but it does make it easier to tap the corners over. We go over to the other side. This was the first iteration. So this one, the corners got knocked in, and it's kind of easier to get the seam sealer in there, but it's a little harder to get everything kind of in place. I'm gonna read the instructions, see how long it has to dry for, and then I'll come back and hit this with some flat black paint. Hopefully it will blend everything in. And then somebody who's looking at this in the future will honestly never know unless they look super closely. I was super excited to show you a final product of this, painted with the flat black so it all blends in. But I was trying to find in the technical data sheet for that seam sealer how long it takes to recoat. Or overpaint, I should say, and it is good for overpainting, but they don't give you a time. They say it cures in 24 hours. If I had to guess, mixing paint in with the seam sealer might do something to the seam sealer before it dries. I don't know. I'm gonna be extra safe. If I come back and have time, maybe in the edit, I'll drop the picture in so you can see it, but otherwise, you get the idea. Big takeaways here is these are only $40. So hit up OpenTracker Racing. At the very beginning of this video, I showed the SKU number. So if you go and type that in, 40 bucks, these fit all 60 to 65 Mercury Comets and Ford Falcons. If you have a different year vehicle or you have a Mustang, they also have parts for those too. So for 40 bucks, if you got yourself a welder in a little bit of time, it's not that hard to do. I am gonna be installing full length subframe connectors in this car as well. So we're gonna weld in subframe connectors too. And then in addition with all of the other chassis, and suspension upgrades we're doing, I think we're really gonna transform how this car handles. If you haven't seen those videos and you're just watching this one, go back because obviously it took me a little bit to get here. I talk about all the parts I bought. I talk about the plan for the car, kind of the whole deal. Go back and watch those earlier videos. Otherwise, let me know what you think. Hopefully this video helped you out. If you had questions and you weren't exactly sure how to install those Trans Am braces, this is how you do it on a 64 Comet. See you next time.